Welcome to Chit Chatter with Rhea, the podcast that provides information to you about the legal and political process. Now here's your host, Rhea Chattergoon.
Welcome back to Chit Chatter. So my friends told me that I didn't cover enough on my last episode. And honestly, guys, it's not that I don't want to, but every day there is something more outrageous, more ridiculous, more enraging. So I don't even know where to start sometimes. I do wish I had the time to put out an episode every day and fulfill my dream of being a journalist, but you all need to refer me some seven-figure cases before I can do that. Let's talk about the big news of the week. Ron DeSantis is banning AP African American history. So a lot of people have been talking about this, right? But let's talk a little bit about facts. So here's the background. On January 12th or so, the Florida Department of Education sent a letter to the College Board stating that the AP African American Studies course, it's a high school course, is, quote, inexplicably contrary to Florida law and significantly lacks educational value, end quote. First, what's the College Board? The College Board is a nonprofit organization. It develops and administers these awful standardized tests and curriculum used through K through 12, right? Kindergarten through 12th grade. And for some post-secondary institutions, I believe, as well. They promote college readiness and, it's used as part of the college admissions process. If you went to school in Florida, like I did, you probably had the ability to take AP classes if you qualified. So what's the law that the Florida Department of Education is claiming this course violates, right? So in 2021, the state enacted a law that banned teaching the concept, which explores racism, systemic racism in the United States and its continued impact. The law also banned material from the 1619 Project. That was the project, the Pulitzer Prize winning project by Nicole Hannah-Jones to reframe American history around the arrival of slave ships on American shores. If you have not read that book, I believe there is HBO or one of these stations, they're doing a documentary on it. But before that comes out, read the book. I have bought that book for several of my friends. Most of the people I bought it for were my white friends. And it was sort of eye-opening for them. They read it. I got texts in the middle of the night like, I can't believe this. But if you have a chance to read the book, it's not light reading, okay? I'm warning you. But it is a very important book, and I do think everyone should read that. If you have high school children, or children who are in high school, I should say, you should really allow them to read that book. So last year, DeSantis, signed this bill restricting how schools could talk about race with students. Why? I mean, I can give you my thoughts. He's racist, right? And he's making a point to be racist. So this course, this AP African American History course, let's talk about it. It's offered as a pilot program in about 60 schools across the country during the 2022 to 2023 school year. And there was a goal of making it available to all schools the following year. The curriculum teaches the history of civil rights, history of African American music, literature, arts, political movements. It's a historical look at the African American experience in America. It is an elective course. Elective, meaning no child in Florida is being required to take it. The child and his or her parents or their parents would have to select the course, right? So this move by DeSantis is nothing more than a dog whistle by someone trying to gain attention from the wrong people, right? Because he's trying to get it from the racists who will vote for him for his 2024 presidential race, the one he's gearing up for. But let's be clear. this AP class isn't just important for the Black kids who want to learn more about their history. This is American history. We are talking about a historical look at the civil rights movement, of music in America, because let's be real, African American music in America is American history, right? You got blues, you got country, you got rock and roll. All of these things that are considered American music is really African American and or Black music. We talk about the course is teaching about literature and arts and political movements. How is that not American history, right? And so, you know what wasn't cut from the program? AP European history, AP art history, AP Japanese language and culture, AP German language and culture. I think there was an AP Spanish language and culture. And so why this particular course? And we know why, right? It's, like I said, a dog whistle. DeSantis has repeatedly used the term woke a lot. He's trying to use that and work it into his stump speeches. And he's used it a lot in the past week when making statements about this course. But make no mistake, when he says anti-wokeness or, we're not going to bow to the woke culture, he means anti-Black. And when these leaders talk about indoctrinating our children, what do they mean by that? Have you ever thought about what that actually means? Because schools are filled with quote unquote indoctrination at every level. So what DeSantis is doing right now is, well, especially with teacher training, by the way, he's whitewashing civics. He's banning actual history. He's banning books. Isn't that indoctrination of his particular views or whoever's, in his back pocket? A friend told me the other day that a teacher in her son's middle school removed To Kill a Mockingbird from the reading list because a parent complained about content. Yesterday, To Kill a Mockingbird, by the way, like a book that all of us have read. Yesterday in Manatee County, Florida, teachers were being told to make their classroom libraries inaccessible to students or risk felony prosecution. So again, this is just an effort to force this law and regulation imposed by DeSantis and his cronies. And this is where we are in Florida at the time. We are a governor who claims to be for quote unquote freedom is banning books. He's banning Disney. He's imposing these laws that restrict the learning for our children. I mean, we're number 48th, I believe, in the country for education. So, it's mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing that the same people who talk about freedom are the ones doing this. And make no mistake, I talked about it in previous episodes. He has the legislature to do it. He received a smackdown earlier this week, though. If you recall, DeSantis had removed State Attorney Andrew Warren. He's in the Tampa area, because he stated that Mr. Warren stated that he would not prosecute women who obtained or professionals who performed abortions. He had also pledged not to criminalize transgender people or gender-affirming health care. Judge Robert Hinkle of the U.S., the Northern District, in a 59-page order, 59 pages. Federal judges write very lengthy orders and opinions, right? Very lengthy. 59 pages, though, is a little excessive. But Judge Hinkle found that DeSantis violated the Constitution when he infringed on Warren's free speech rights. He ripped into DeSantis for his overreach and specifically said it was a politically motivated attempt to oust a progressive prosecutor who was twice elected by the Hillsborough County voters. But, that's something that DeSantis has been doing for a very long time. He's been abusing his power across the state. He's been replacing elected officials with his own cronies. He did it here in Broward County with the school board. Judge Hinkle could not reinstate the state attorney, Andrew Warren, because it was a matter of state law, not federal law. So hoping Andrew takes that up. DeSantis is not backing down, though. He is actually touting this as a win for him because, he tells his supporters that, this is what he's doing, replacing these elected officials, and they're getting away with it. So hopefully Warren takes some legal action on the state level. I'm not sure what that would be because DeSantis has to reappoint him and has stated that he won't. So here we are, Florida. We are living in a fascist state. We are banning books. We're removing elected officials. We're banning Disney, the happiest place on earth. And the governor himself is just overt about his racism. And people keep voting for him. One of the things he did with banning this course, and I want to make sure I point this out for my conservative minorities, is that he has focused in on the queer portion of the course. The course is more than just that. Like I stated earlier, it talks about literature. You can go read it. Go on the College Board and read what the course is about, what the proposed course was about. Literature, arts, political history, civil rights, music. It's not about just queer history, but being queer and Black is a subject that should probably be discussed. But he's honing in on that little point because he wants to appeal to the conservative African American who may agree with him because he's making that point. And again, don't listen to me. Don't listen to him. Go Google and figure these things out for yourself because all of the information is there. I was perusing Facebook the other day and someone I know, I won't say his name out of respect. I have taken him to task on this, so I don't feel bad saying this. I'm not saying it behind his back. Cuban descent, had 2 sons with a Black woman, currently married to another Black woman, belongs to a historically Black fraternity. He stated that he didn't think DeSantis was racist and that he would vote for him. I didn't comment on the post. I've called this guy racist to his face. I try not to engage on Facebook anymore. But with all of these things, with all of these banning of books and banning AP American history, African American history, and all of the dog whistles that have happened, there are people who really don't think that DeSantis is racist or that the GOP is racist. I don't know what they think because I just don't understand. So, maybe if any of you have an explanation, please reach out to me because I really do want to understand the thought process behind it because I can't see things like this in front of my face and then say, well, it's not racist, And again, you don't have to be Black or brown to call out racism. I'm really enraged by this subject because I want my white friends to talk about this more. I want my friends who are the strict constitutionalists to talk about how they can justify DeSantis impinging on people's freedoms in this state. Where are the freedom fighters? Where are the people who claim about individual rights? Where are the people of small government? I mean, are those only the rights of certain people? Like, what's that quote or that poem? I think it was, first they came for the socialists and I didn't speak out because I was a socialist. And I think there was something else about unionists. The end of the quote was, then they came for the Jews and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came out for me and there was no one left to speak for me. And I always think about that quote or poem because it's so true. If we don't speak up for each other, what happens when they come for you? What happens when they come for Cuban history or they decide they're not going to teach the Holocaust anymore? What happens then? Why are our children being so undereducated in this state? like we can't even compete on a world level. It just really, really irritates me. I will tell you, my son was in a private school, a Catholic private school. We had an issue. He was in kindergarten. We had an issue because I noticed around Martin Luther King Jr. Holiday and then Black History Month, and then prior to that, Hispanic History Month, that the teacher did not do any classwork. Of course, being the person that I am, I inquired. Well, it turned into a thing. I basically got an All Lives Matter email from the school, from the teacher, then from the principal. My husband and I met with the principal and the curriculum director. The principal at the time, she's no longer there, said to me, "I don't see color." My response to her was, "You should be embarrassed as an educator of 33 years to say that to my face." I then sent a letter to the superintendent of the Archdiocese of Miami. He was even worse than the teacher and the principal, and specifically wrote me back emails putting Black in lowercase, and basically sent me an All Lives Matter email. I then, we made the decision to withdraw my son from that school because my point to both the Archdiocese and to the school itself, to the principal and the teacher, was my son is going to get what he needs at home. He is going to learn about everyone's history. I'm going to make sure of that. But not every parent has the ability to do that or the desire, right? And so when John and Max are sitting next to him and they don't know his history and they don't know what his, people have been through, where is the mutual respect? Because why do I have to learn European history when you can't even teach me about what happened here in America? Or you're teaching me what happened with white America. Or you're teaching me that Black people in the United States were slaves and then slavery ended and that's it. I mean, there's so much more to history, to American history, than that. And so, what irritates me about all of this is that the civil rights movement paved the way for every ethnicity, race, and people who are not white in this country, and they benefit from it. But when it comes to Black people, it's a passing subject. When it comes to Black people in America, it is just sort of, oh, get over it, right? And all other races and ethnicities kind of just sit back and sit on the sidelines. And it just pisses me off because I keep saying this to you guys. There are more of us than there are of them. And we need to organize and we need to vote like our life depends on it because it does. I don't know what else to say about it. I get really enraged, so I'm sorry if I'm sounding angry, but I am angry. I am angry because I just don't understand what it's going to take for us to come together as a people. Speaking of which, I'll move on from this topic. Speaking of which, there were 2 more mass shootings this week in California. 39 mass shootings in 2023 so far. I'm recording this on January 25th. There are more shootings than days in January. And so, a mass shooting is defined as, and I had to look this up, a shooting where 4 or more people are shot, excluding the shooter. And I was talking about it with, 2 of my friends. And we were just talking about, why does this not happen in other countries? Why is it happening here? And the answer is there's too much access to guns. And again, I am for responsible gun ownership. I don't want anybody taking away my guns either, but something's got to be done. So, but until then, thoughts and prayers, folks, thoughts and prayers, because we can't go anywhere. We can't go to a grocery store. We can't go to a church. We can't go to, a function. We can't go anywhere. We can't go anywhere without the thought of being shot. So, until then, I just be careful out there. Keep your eyes open and what else can I say? All right, what else is happening? They found classified documents at Mike Pence's house. Maybe mother needed to read them for his bedtime story. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, to be a white man in America has got to be such a blessing, right? Again, who didn't have classified docs or not yet, right? I mean, who knows? But at this point, I just don't understand. What else is happening this week? I mean, it's just been so much. The GOP is proposing to abolish the tax code. The Fair Tax Act is what it's calling it. And so what it would do is institute a 30% sales tax on purchases in exchange for doing away with income, Social Security, Medicare tax. It's really ridiculous. I mean, it's another way for them to just help their friends. And I encourage you to look it up. Don't take my word for it. I encourage you to look at the details of the bill, because the people who are going to suffer the most are the middle and lower class, because purchases are going to get more expensive. And in the meantime, minimum wage is still $7.25. In the meantime, wages aren't being increased, right? And these are the same people talking about this 30% sales tax are the same people who were just blowing up and hemming and hawing about inflation, right? So the GOP has nothing to offer the American people. And I don't care if you quote me on that. Oscar nominations came out. What can I say about them? They were white and male. Wakanda got some good nominations, though. And so if Rihanna or maybe Beyonce performs, I'll watch it. But until then, we'll just not watch the Oscars. All right, so let's talk about severance agreements, because that is what I was going to talk about today. So what are severance agreements? Usually in January and February, we see a lot of layoffs, a lot of restructuring. Big tech companies this year started laying people off in December as opposed to January. And so you saw Amazon, Google, I think there were some other companies laying off, massive layoffs, about 10,000 people. And so a lot of these people are getting offered severance agreements. One of the things I do in my practice is assist clients with negotiating their severance agreement, either while they sign their contract or after they are terminated and presented with a severance agreement. And so when I say before, I always encourage people who have employment contracts to negotiate their severance upfront. Because when you do have massive layoffs like the ones that you're seeing, your severance is already set in stone, as opposed to a massive layoff where they may say, well, we're giving everyone 2 weeks of salary as part of severance, right? So, I always say to people, try to negotiate that up front if you're in a position to do so. And usually, you're talking sort of director, officer level, C-suite people who have those kind of contracts that you can negotiate those. So what is a severance agreement, right? A severance agreement is a contract that an employer may ask an employee to sign when they're terminated from a job. So severance pay is often offered in exchange for the employee's release of any potential claims. That doesn't mean you have to have a claim. It's potential claim against the employer. And so severance contracts that contain a release of all claims against the employer in exchange for severance pay or other benefits, right? Because you could get payment of COBRA, you could get vacation time. So for example, in Florida, there is no law that says you have to get your vacation time if you're terminated. It actually goes to the company's policy. And so that severance agreement is legal, enforceable, and binding. Most severance agreements will include a confidentiality clause. It will also include a non-disparagement clause. What does that mean? It means you can't sign that agreement, receive the severance pay, and then go trash your former employer, in the press, on Facebook, or to your friends, to your family. They don't want you doing that. Some of them also include what's called a cooperation clause. And that means if for some reason that former employer now needs you to resolve an issue or be involved in a lawsuit, you are now agreeing to participate and help them out. So they can be very complicated, right? While an employer could require an employee to release claims in exchange for payment for hours already worked worked or benefits already owed to the employer can't be released. Okay, so I want you to be clear of that. If you suspect that you have wages owed to you, have benefits owed to you, do not sign that severance agreement. Send a letter to your employer clarifying those issues before any severance is entered into. And so, listen, there are various reasons for severance agreements, right? It doesn't just have to be a termination or a layoff. I mean, it could be restructuring. Businesses have different reasons. There are certain laws, that require you to let people know, who's being let go, the ages of the people. Sometimes there's a requirement that everyone gets the same amount of money. So it could be they're giving everyone 2 weeks or 1 week. That's company policy. And so, or like I said before, you may be asked to sign a severance agreement if your employer thinks or knows, right? Because you've already reported some sort of discrimination or retaliation. They know that you're getting ready to bring a claim against them or may have a claim against them. They want you to sign that release to do so. So one of the questions I get asked regularly is whether an employer is required to give severance pay. And the answer is no. Unless you have a contract, like I talked about before, unless there's a union contract, unless, there's some sort of policy that the company has that requires some sort of preset amount of severance pay to employees who quit or who laid off or terminated. An employer is not required to give you severance. That doesn't mean it can't be negotiated. All right. Don't leave with everything on the table. There's a misconception in Florida that is an at-will state, and so there's nothing you can do, and so why even bother? That's actually not true. Another question I usually get is how much, is my employer supposed to include in the severance pay? And the answer is there's no set amount. There really is no set amount. One of the other questions I always get is, could I file for unemployment if my employer gave me severance? And so it depends. It depends on the state you're in. It depends on how long your severance was. It depends when you got it. I mean, severance is not usually considered a continuance of quote unquote wages for purposes of unemployment. So, you could still get severance pay for a certain period of time. So, for example, if you got severance pay for 2 weeks, you do have to let the unemployment agency know, I received this payment, right? Because then you're going to get double payment. So it depends on the state that you're in. So I really, this is not legal advice. Okay. This is just for informational purposes only. The other question I usually get is sort of what claims can be released in a waiver. So statutory claims, discrimination claims, retaliation claims, you usually see those, common law claims, disability claims. There's certain unknown claims that may be there. You cannot release your ability to respond to a subpoena or file an administrative charge. You can't release those things. So there's specific language that goes into a severance agreement. You can't release a workers' compensation claim or a wage claim, like I mentioned before. So if you are presented with a severance agreement, if you've been terminated, if you've been laid off, whatever word you want to use, and you have been provided with a severance agreement, I encourage you to have an attorney review that agreement, ensure that you are being protected, ensure that you're not signing something that you don't want to sign. Okay. Again, my office handles that, handles those types of negotiations on a regular basis. Is actually something I enjoy because the people on the other side that I usually negotiate with are a lot more friendly than litigators. So, and it's actually, everybody's trying to do the right thing for their clients. So it's not as adversarial as dealing with litigation. So I hope that that was helpful. Like I said, I'm going to be doing a little bit more of, just facts on employment law. Obviously, I practice in Florida. So, I'll try to keep it general. If you have questions regarding specific Florida law, then I encourage you to reach out to my office or an employment attorney in your area. And thanks for joining us. I hope I wasn't too angry today. I'm just really annoyed about this DeSantis thing. But I hope you subscribe. I hope you share. You guys aren't sharing my podcast. So if I can ask you to do that, we need to get our streaming up to hit a certain level so that we can get automatic marketing from the different platforms. So if you could do that for me, please share my podcast, like, subscribe, and I'll talk to you next time.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and recommend wherever you get your podcasts and tell a friend. You can also follow the podcast on our social media pages.